There were times in my 20s where like I couldn't see myself even making it to my 30s. I mean, not only just from the death that I was experiencing, but just because I was like, how could life possibly continue on in this way? It's like if you are going through it, try your best to slow down, because that's where I sped up. I just was like more and more and more, like push things down, where it's like if you're able to slow down and able to sit with it, it's tough, but that's where the work begins.
Welcome to Ivana Speaks, Carly.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. And as much as I know about you, I'd love the audience to know just a quick note if you could share your background.
Absolutely. So I have my master's in public health, and I've worked in the fitness industry as a fitness professional, training and teaching nutrition for 14 years now.
That's amazing. Yeah, so you're a health guru at this point.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you have a really profound story, Carly, is that from the age of 13 to 18, you've experienced something most people have never experienced in a lifetime. And you experienced 22 deaths in that short window. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how did that shape you?
Yes. So starting, well, to rewind just a little bit more before then, in when I was like 5, 6 years old, I can remember going to sleep at night and just feeling like the vastness of the universe, and just knowing, or I had gone to one funeral. It was like my great grandmother's, and I didn't know what happened after death. And I could just like, I don't know if there was probably a lesson or something in school too of teaching us about the solar system, but just going to sleep at night, like I would struggle, as a 5, 6 year old. Ever since I was a young kid, I feel like it's almost, or, well, now having the hindsight, that I think that it's almost like a karmic lesson in my life, having experienced so much loss. So, yeah, from age 12 turning 13 until I was about 17, 18 years old, I lost 22 people in my life. And also, to rewind a little more too, I grew up just north of the city in New York. So when I was in second grade, when I was 7, was when 9/11 happened, which had a huge impact on me as well, to experience, that level of
Catastrophic death.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, from those experiences, and then when I hit 13 to 17, like I'm saying, that period of time where it was just like compound grief, like one after another, it was people that were pretty much like right on, either like on the outside of my circle, or like it was like my dance teacher or my best friend's mom, like, and then but then there was people like my grandfather too, so it absolutely, it had such a significant impact on me growing up.
Yeah. And I imagine to some extent desensitizes you a little bit to death. You're almost like, well, gosh, I've seen this 15 other times. So how did that just shape your mindset as a child? Did you have fear of death or
Yeah, I definitely feared losing my parents the most. Like I was always afraid, almost like daily, going to like elementary school, middle school, that they were going to die or they weren't going to be there when I got home. But I mean, I don't think, with death and loss, like I don't think you can really be fully like desensitized, but because it just kept on happening like one after another, that it was just like, oh, this is happening again, and this is the funeral outfit that I wear, and this is, and it was just kind of going through the motions, and I mean, you can imagine a little 15-year-old, after experiencing that, like how the impact that it has, and carrying that around, and not being able to really relate to like your classmates, or being in high school and things that, that I just couldn't relate to other kids about at that point.
yeah, man, and I bet that really thrusts you into maturity so fast. I mean, as a child, death is one of the most profound things that you can live through at that age.
I guess during that time, I I didn't really have any kind of coping mechanisms, or I didn't even really know what that was or what that looked like, you know. And it wasn't until like I reached college that that's when I started finding out that for me, like exercising and fitness and like really diving into that was the way I coped, pretty
Yeah,
much.
exactly. Yeah. So kind of physical exertion was we kind of also spoke about, although that is a very healthy thing to be doing and being conscious, but we mentioned earlier just how you can abuse these things too.
Oh yeah.
And so how did doing something like that that's notoriously considered healthy impact you in
Yeah.
maybe a different way?
Yeah, so when I my freshman year when I went to college, I was fully immersed in fitness and group fitness. Like it became absolutely my passion. Like I just loved the energy, the community aspect of it, and you know, being able to teach a class with like 40 other students in the room. Like it was, you know, that's really where you know, I started to like I just got really into it. And going into my sophomore year, I did experience like another pretty significant event. I witnessed the fatal car accident. And then that's where I kind of started to shift, you know, hindsight of turning into like over exercising, you know, because from experiencing all of that grief and then having this next, you know, situation that I I kept just pushing my body. Like I knew that I needed to like get back up again. And instead of really like processing the grief and what I went through, I just knew that I needed or that just by pushing myself and pushing into like the next thing that or the next workout or the next class or something that that's where like I wasn't thinking about what I was experiencing, you know. And so yeah, in college, I was on a dance team. I taught like 8 to 10 group fitness classes a week. I was a dance minor, and then I was also doing CrossFit.
Oh
Like
my,
5 day, I was
that's a lot of exercise.
yes, yeah. So I would be like active, like sometimes like 6 to 8 hours a day. Yeah. So it was extremely hard on my body. And from the outside, I looked healthy, you know, and like inside I wasn't, you know, like mentally, emotionally, and then physically too. Like my body, because you know, our bodies hold on to everything. Body keeps the score, right? So
Right.
yeah, and so like all of that tension and everything that was stored in my body, I mean, my back hurt, my knees hurt, my ankles hurt, like everything was sore, you know, from just really overexerting my body for a extended time.
Wow. Now that you are a little bit removed from that time frame, what do you think that you were trying to cope with in that state?
Mm. I think the biggest thing was that you know, in those workouts or in those classes that I wasn't thinking about the grief of it.
When you look back at it, what do you think if you sat with the feeling that you had? What do you think that feeling really was?
Mm. Just I mean the sadness for sure and you know like the waves of grief where it's like I can remember there would be times where something that happened, you know, maybe it was only 5 or 6 months ago, but it was still like intense where, you know, grief comes and goes in those waves and it comes up at intense times, you know. It's not linear either. I think there would be more times where like more grief would come up for me that I would just try to like keep pushing it down, you know, and that like I didn't want to sit with those heavy feeling like I didn't want to be in college and just like crying all the time or just like feel sad, you know, or just missing the people that I had lost, you know.
That's really profound. And I'm curious, has that shifted your perception of death in the afterlife in any way? I think I mean, I know you have a great story about your grandfather and feeling his presence and, kind of coming out of that grief. How do you look at that aspect of life now, the afterlife.
Yes. In the last, I would say like year and a half too, that I've like really gone inward and just connected with like my spirit and my soul and knowing that the other spirits are here with us too. And yeah, that one instance, I did have a session with a medium, and she had mentioned to me over years that that he puts his hand on my shoulder, and she has said that to me a handful of times. And then after the last session that I had with her, over the course of years, but after the last session that I had with her, I was just walking my dogs, and in my head I was like, well, this isn't going to feel like a normal poke. And then I felt this like energy through my left shoulder where it just felt like a zing. Like I don't even know how to explain it. And I just knew that it was him. And another like cardinals have always been a sign for me. I can remember like in one instance that there was like two that were like hopping around. Like I was on a walk and they just like followed me. And whenever I just see them, I just feel like okay, everything's okay. And I feel like in the last few months even too, where I've been able to be like, okay, like the cardinals are spiritual for me, but like so is everything else, like this it's not just this physical world that we live in.
That's so beautiful. And I think it's also beautiful way to look at grief because kind of framing it that they're always with you,
Mm.
it doesn't feel so as a permanent ending with them, it's like, oh no, we're still together, but just in a different capacity and different, experience.
Yes. Yeah. No, I definitely agree.
That's really cool. Given everything that you've done in fitness and stuff, there was a really monumental moment in your life where you had a health scare and community and everything helped you, but during your health scare, you mentioned that you saw how people could just give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you
So
mean by that?
right. Yeah. So just to tell the brief story that I was pretty brutally attacked by a dog. And then I had two surgeries after that. So over the course of a year, I spent almost 6.5, 7 months on bed rest of just laying and going from Miss Fitness, Miss Active, Miss I cope by being active, to then having to, in three different instances too, right, of being on bed rest and then healing, and then being on bed rest again and then healing. And then the last surgery was really intense to heal from.
Getting to a place of despair when you are going from a very active person that probably has a social life and all that, then all of a sudden you're bedridden. And the one thing that kind of was your coping mechanism in some way with
Mhm.
this thing called life is taken away. And
Mhm.
so you're really left with your thoughts and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And from being those how it was like three instances and like just the extent of the pain that I was in, it's like it weighs so heavily on your mind. And I absolutely saw that fine line where people don't sometimes don't come back from, and the healthcare system of just giving you more painkillers and not really being able to help you kind of get like through it. It's just like, here's a prescription and send you home. And so, yeah, going from yeah, was absolutely my outlet. And also, I grew up dancing, and how I was on the dance team and stuff. So even just taking classes, like anything active, I couldn't even stand. I couldn't walk my dog, like I couldn't even take her out to go potty, anything. So, yeah, I that time I really had to start to shift and see that there's more than just my physical health, and then that's really the time where I started to sit with more of like my mental health, my spiritual health, like all the other dimensions. Even at first, I remember too, like coming out of my first surgery, I was like, oh, I'm just going to dial in on my nutrition. And like coming out of surgery, like it's so different than like, I mean, you can have these goals and everything going into it, but there reached a point where, I mean, for the first few days after the surgery, like, or one of my surgeries, I wasn't even hungry. And then when I got hungry, I was like, I want a steak, I want French fries or whatever it is,
I
you
get that.
know?
That sounds amazing
Yeah.
at any time.
Yeah, right. So,
Yes.
but I just like needed like the calories at that point. But then eventually I was in my healing process, and that's where I'm saying like I really was able to kind of just dial in on the other dimensions of health, and just and not focus so solely on my physical health and what I looked like almost, and that was also the period of time too where I really started to notice how with our or with working out that we or how I like you get to a point where you're almost obsessed with it. And because of the it's like like the dopamine release, or if or just like the mental aspect where it's like, oh, I worked
Mhm.
out for 2 days and then but oh, now I've taken 3 days off, and now it's like you're always thinking ahead of like to what's next or something, versus just being like, I don't know, to like slow down and just being able to yeah, I guess kind of like separate from the physical side of it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Your story reminds me a lot of mine, where I had a lot of expectations placed on me as a child. And I always felt like I had to be overachieving or whatever. So I'm just curious, did you have any of that in your childhood?
I feel like, yeah, to an extent where and I would always compare myself to my older sister, or um or whether the parent dynamic did that as well.
I just see certain examples and patterns in yours that were are in mine. And I know when I really drilled down to it for me personally, it was, oh, you have this foreign father and mother, and these weren't good enough. There was just high
Right.
expectations that
Right.
bled into my adult life. But
Yeah, yeah, and I can
maybe
def
this is just a personal story, actually.
No, I mean I think it's all related, and I think that that there were higher expectations and like, comparing myself to my sister, like I said, and also I had a workhorse of a father. I love him so much, and but I absolutely have his work ethic where it was just go, 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 and just, fill my schedule from morning to night, or yeah.
Yeah, I know. And it's so important to take that time to sit with yourself. And I love that you had that journey. Did you have a defining experience in your journey that made you really question our healthcare system
Mm.
and what we were being educated on or lack thereof?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I went to undergrad and got my master's degree in public health. Coming out of grad school, I was so passionate for pursuing and being able to teach kids health, and wanting like to have like a facility where it's like parents can work out, or adults, it's like adults and kids. And then that way the kids can see what their parents are doing, and they can be like role models too. As I was going through school, I started to kind of just see the gap in education, right? And how in order to teach health in public schools, you need to work for a grant funded organization, because in most schools in the country there's no budget for health, right? And I mean, a lot of us, I don't think my experience is a one-off, that we may have had one health class in school growing up. What was, if you don't mind me asking, what was your experience with health?
Honestly, I don't recall any of that. I think
Mm,
for me, it was sports and just being in that environment really educated and shaped me. And that's where I kind of just learned how to work out, and I realized how good it made me feel. And so I just would carry that on. But I agree with you. Had I not been active in sports, I don't think I would have any sort of awareness about conscious nutrition exercise, how to properly exercise, and maybe even not overexert yourself. And
Right.
I mean, now I think it can be overly complicated these days, right? There's a lot. People have all the watches, the heart monitors, and that's really cool, but it's not sustainable for everyone. And, with that, I will say sometimes just starting with walking, when you don't know where to start in terms of health, I always go back there.
100%. Yeah. I totally agree. The topic of health education and being in schools, it's like we graduate from public school at 18 and kind of to your point, unless you're involved in sports or something outside that, you don't really know anything about your body. You don't know about your physical health. You don't know about your emotional health, your mental health, that from my opinion, I truly feel like health could and should start in kindergarten and be a course that's ran all the way through. There's so many smaller topics that can be taught to a 5 and 6 year old.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes also your environment doesn't always model that experience either. I think parents today are a lot more health conscious than they were maybe when we were growing up. So sometimes I would say it might fall on the education system
hmm
a little bit.
Well, I did this seminar where the main, or it was like a sports nutrition seminar that I attended, and their main takeaway from it was that we're considered the third generation that's nutrient deficient, right? And it also ties into the education piece, but because if you go back to the nutrient deficient side, right? So if you go back to like our great grandparents, like there wasn't the fast food around, there wasn't as many preservatives. It was like they were eating the meat and cheese and veggies and fruit, and then having mostly like local or produce and stuff, and then fast food starts getting introduced, and then more preservatives, and then also our soil is becoming less nutritious, right? And so that was like a sports specific nutrition seminar, and kind of explaining like why we see so many kids just like tearing ACLs or like tearing ligaments and stuff now. But also to your point that, for generations now that there's been this gap in health education, right? Because like our parents didn't necessarily, they graduated from public school too at 18, and they weren't taught necessarily much either. I mean, maybe they had like the home ec classes or like cooking classes and stuff, but yeah, so I think that the gap has just gotten bigger. And then also to your point too, that then yeah, with social media and all the fads and everything that's, that this is the next best thing, or like this is what's going to get you to that we just keep on like looking for like a quick fix, or it's not looking at health as a whole, right? It's just like what yeah, like what's the quickest and easiest pill that we can take,
Oh,
you know?
yeah, you're right. I think now with the instant gratification of social media, now you want that in every capacity, right? So your
Mm-hmm.
diet, your health, I think eh, it's really, especially nutrition and fitness, I think it's such an independent journey. You have to see what works for you. And I found for me, in terms of nutrition, like process of elimination is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And once you reintroduce certain things, then you can realize, oh, that's bothering me,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is so important, and it really is. I love this saying you said, it's mind, body, and soul.
Mm.
And I resonate with that so much. I think they are three different pillars, and you almost have to exercise all three to be the best you
Mm.
possible.
I totally agree. Yeah. Um, and I mean, I guess to the point with like, the education system, right? That there are things I know it becomes like controversial, right? But I feel like there are still lessons or like takeaways that we can still be teaching kids at a young age.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. Yeah. And I know on your fitness journey, yes, there was the struggles of some of these things, but you also did experience the most profound sense of acceptance and community in
Mhm.
fitness as well. You showed a great example, I think, of that when you were overly focusing on the body pillar and not so much the mind and soul.
Absolutely.
Life showed you that.
And then kind of like we were, or I know I mentioned this to you earlier also that, that the things that we go through, some of the hardest lessons that we go through, and if we actually like sit with them and process them, that they can become our superpowers, and I was bypassing what I had gone through and just pushing it down for so long, that the universe showed me that, that I still had to sit with it. And the way I had to do that was to be on bed rest for, quite a long time and to just keep building myself up. So, hindsight, I am so grateful for the experience. And I mean, even it's so crazy to say this that like I'm even grateful for the pain that I went through, and to be able to come out on the other side and, be able to say that and being able to, I say also that I will always be a student of that chapter of my life, from going through like the loss and then going into like fitness so much. And then, now really sitting with like the mental and spiritual side of things that, it really does, it's all tied together. Mhm.
I love that, Carly. That's a really great perspective, I think, for the audience to have is that sometimes your darkest moments are the most soul shaping and life changing experiences that you could go through.
Mhm.
And I feel like life really is a series of lessons, but how we look at them really depends on your perspective. And sometimes the perspective is gained when you're on the other side of it. And so I really like that message.
Yeah, it's like going through it, you're like, and I kept on trying to have this mentality where I'm not like, why me? Or like, why is this happening? Or like, I just went through all of these things, like, why is this or like, what's happening? And I would kept on trying to tell myself not to have that perspective. But the reason why these things were still happening is also because I wasn't able to take almost like responsibility for my part in it, and by that I mean that it's like no, it's not like from going through like the grief. It's not that I had a part in those people dying, right? But my role was that I wasn't processing that.
Yeah, I think a great takeaway to think about is in these moments of despair, ask yourself, what is this teaching me?
Mm,
And I know that's a hard thing to, as a person in the middle of something so traumatic, to ask yourself this question, but really, there is a lesson. And when you can reframe it to what is this teaching me? And not just that, but what are they teach? So most of the time, the people are your biggest lessons in life.
mhm.
And you and I kind of have a lot of similarities with some relationships that changed who we were. I think it's also important to touch base on a little bit of relationships and how we could have done things that had been demonstrated, but we chose not to. That relationship that you were in, when did you have that awareness that if I stayed in here in this, I would be repeating what I knew wasn't good for me? Did you have that like aha moment at some point in your, I believe, 4-year relationship? How did you feel in that moment with that connection? And I'm also happy to share mine
Oh
too,
yeah, yeah.
because I think we're very
For
similar.
sure. I mean, it definitely, I mean, my attachment patterns were like screaming, right? And there were times where it's like, that this isn't for me, but I'll stick in it because that's what I kind of saw growing up, and even though I wasn't feeling like I was being like fully supported or fully seen or even just like fully happy in the relationship, that I was like, oh, but I need to do something different or like be better or something,
Yeah, no, I resonate with that completely. I think sometimes we do default to these things that are safe and comfortable.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I look back at my relationship journey and somehow I was attracting people that
Mm,
emulated exactly the lessons that looking back I shouldn't have gone, I didn't need to repeat. But
mm,
I kept being confronted with the same personality type. And I'll give you an example. So consistently, it was I was giving more than I was receiving. And then I was also not met emotionally consistently with each romantic connection. And it was almost like there something there to fix or something that, and but I just was attracting this consistently. And I knew I didn't want that. My brain, I was like, what is happening? But when I reflected and when I really closed the loop on this repeat, is I recognized, oh, I'm not loving myself enough. And I'm accepting this breadcrumbing, as they call it, of this like
Mm-hmm.
half invested relationship because I was always so selfless. And so it really all brought me back to myself and my love for myself. And I think that that is a huge lesson in relationships for maybe all of us, and not just female.
And I think also how you're saying to like how in relationships and in relationship with yourself, like how you're saying like with like the self-love, and putting yourself last, and the like and accepting breadcrumbs like you say too. Even from experiencing all of that, the loss that I went through, and truly like hating myself in a way of not loving myself and to the point where of yeah like accepting less than I deserve in relationships and also just that constant of like beating my body up and that's like what fitness kind of ended up kind of becoming for me more so or where it was like almost like punishing my body instead of loving my body through it. And also, yeah, the from my experience in that relationship too, and how I'm saying of like punishing myself or just like doing things that weren't good for me and it was the same things coming out in that relationship with him of just being so attached and accepting less than I deserved. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how life will do that to you. It I think it really gives you lessons, the same ones, until
Yes.
you really figure it out.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
again, relating it back to the experiences with loss and everything, it's like okay, like I can't just keep pushing this down. Like I need to face this like when it happens. And the turning point for me actually was when I was attacked by that dog. I knew that from the scenario of how it happened, that I knew that it was going to mess me up a bit, and that I was diagnosed with PTSD, but I was like, if I jump on this, then maybe I'll be able to like heal better or like heal. I don't even like to say like heal faster, but that I would be able to process it maybe a little bit faster and have some more clarity around it. Right. So, after I was attacked, I ended up working with a therapist who did EMDR. You're given like two paddles and they vibrate. Like in a certain tempo back and forth and it simulates both sides of your brain as you're talking through like traumatic events. So going through that experience of like talk therapy and with the paddles I was able to go from feeling like I did something wrong when I was being attacked to being like I did the best that I could. Like my body fought back, like I was able to stay standing. I didn't get knocked down, that I truly handled the situation the best I could. And then after EMDR, and everybody has a different experience with EMDR too, but then I was able to see it from like a different perspective, almost like a bird's eye view of being able to see myself walking on the sidewalk, before I was attacked versus being like feeling it, like because like at night before I did EMDR, like I would go to sleep at night and I could just like feel the chomps, and then from going through the EMDR, then again, like I said, like how I had like the different perspective and then also with that, then that's also when I started doing more, or another modality of doing like lymphatic drainage and craniosacral therapy. And I really started to dive into healing my body on more than just the like the muscular level, because our bodies are made up of 70% of water or fluid, and It's our lymph, and we have like a certain flow in our body. And from trauma and from certain things, like that water can reroute, and then that's how we get like little bits of swelling and edema. So from after I was attacked, doing the EMDR with my therapist, and then doing the different modalities of like being able to move it in my body, that's where I started to like actually like sit with it and process it. But I mean, for the first 27, 28 years of my life, or from going through all those significant traumas, like I just held on to everything. I pushed everything down. And almost to your point too, where I was like almost embarrassed for this having been my human experience, and almost embarrassed that this kept happening to me.
Yeah, I think that that's not talked about enough. Thank you so much for bringing up that word.
Mm,
I think we all feel that a lot. And I think embarrassment is such an interesting word,
mhm,
I'm curious on your view on it, but I think for me, when I think of that word, I think sometimes it comes with judgment and public perception more than anything.
mm,
And it's almost, and that's how I think I internalize it.
mhm.
I'm curious on how do you view embarrassment, and what does that really mean?
I mean, coming from somebody like I have such a huge heart, and like I love everybody, and I've always said that I'm not judgmental, towards people, where really I was so deeply judging myself, and so that was a huge aspect of the embarrassment that I was feeling.
Oh, totally. Want to talk about embarrassment? Like, man, I've never felt more embarrassed and back to at myself than when I decided my marriage needed to end.
Mm,
When I was like coming out of that realization, and actually maybe even prior. I think I stayed personally in that way longer than I should have because of fear of embarrassment
mhm,
and fear of judgment. I actively practice not judging others, but I'm judging myself in
mm,
that scenario. And it quickly, when I on the other side of that, I was like, I don't give a damn anymore about that. I'm like, that's my story. He was my biggest teacher, and I'm
mhm.
so grateful for the experience. And how anyone else receives that, that's on them and not on me at this point. And
Right.
I think that's a much better way to have grace with yourself.
Mhm.
And looking back, and I know this might be a hot topic, the marriage and breaking a marriage, but I mean, ask yourself, am I fulfilled? Am I really happy here? Or I'm just surviving, not thriving, as they say,
Right. Yeah.
and sticking it out because of embarrassment.
Absolutely. And yeah, the surviving aspect of it, because yeah, I mean that just hits home for me too, because you get stuck in this survival mode, and then that's how you handle one thing is how you handle everything too, right? So if you're in survival mode in your relationship, it's like where else is that being almost like projected in your life, of judgment, even like how we're saying, and how I am so aware to like not judge others, and that I am so like inclusive and have so much love for everybody, but truly, if I do have that deep level of judgment for myself, again, like where else is that showing up in my life?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Shedding light on the dark corners within.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. It's kind of almost a light on what's not worked through yet,
Mm.
right? And
Mhm.
why is it manifesting like this in, judgment?
Right.
And that's something I think is important to sit with yourself, and back to kind of tie it all back in. It's the mind, body, and soul.
Mhm.
This is very much the mind concept and soul, but probably is bleeding into the body in some ways as well, because you mentioned it earlier, body keeps the score. And for me, as I mentioned, in the dynamic that I was in, I knew my mind and body were not wanting to look at that darkness. And that was manifesting in my physical body. Like
Mm,
my hormones were out of whack. I was just in this like constant fight or flight where I was like, what is going on?
yeah, that's that survival mode. And I guess also tying it back to my point from earlier too, of being able to take like radical responsibility, and taking responsibility for your part in that dynamic, right? And like for me, it's like taking responsibility for, or like, at that time was taking responsibility for that grief, even that I was, and how I was like causing my own suffering in a way.
I think sometimes we stick through things because say to yourself, I made this decision. But here's the other way of looking at it. You made that decision, but you can now change that outcome.
Mm,
You don't have to live there. And back to it is your responsibility. No one else will save you.
mhm.
And sometimes these dark moments, we can say, oh, they were the external person or thing was the issue, but also they will mirror that back to you, and you will also not be your best self.
Right, right. I mean, it's like if you're in survival mode, and just trying to survive, and then it's like that other person in that relationship, there must be some level of that going on too, and that, if it's in within the dynamic.
Absolutely. And it's to have forgiveness
Mm,
and to for yourself, for them, and for the situation. And but the most important thing I think is that you learn, right? And you learn what doesn't give you that sense of fulfillment and recognize that life will show you it doesn't give you fulfillment. I mean, we've
mhm,
both had these lived experiences. You are in total control and you write your reality. I strongly believe that.
mm,
So, if you want to believe happiness is not meant for you, well, that is going to be what you manifest. And that kind of brings me into, I like that topic a little bit, the idea of manifesting.
mm,
I mean, do you do that? Do you practice manifesting? How do you think about some of this stuff in your
So
own
that,
mind?
yeah, that's I feel like that has been not to say like a challenge for me, but I would say like, in the last year and a half or so that where I've really been like dialing in and going inward, of being able to really tune into like my spirit and like my guides. I just never felt like I could like ask the universe for things, there were times that I was like so down where I was like, there's no way that something good is going to happen, if that makes sense. And so I guess for me, like more so like manifesting for me is more so been like just like really tuning into my spirit, like I'm saying, and like my guides. And yeah.
I know what you mean. I think that's very common, actually. I think many people kind of put that belief in their mind that that's not meant for me, or oh, I can't do that. And I think that is kind of the start of the manifestation. You're almost manifesting the that it's not possible,
Mm,
right? Because
mhm,
your thoughts really do create your outcome and your reality. That's really been my experience. And choosing to be happy and aligning my life and my actions to happiness is in some way that's manifestation. It's having that choice, and will be happy, and that's a non-negotiable, and then you apply actions and decisions that make you happy, and you follow your internal guidance, and I don't think it's that complicated.
it isn't, but it is like a level of vibration, right? Or like a frequency that like you have to meet yourself at, and I think for the longest time in my life, like of being so sad and just every day, like that negative mindset, that negative loop that your mind goes to. And then I started to just become aware of that voice in my head, and like how I was just saying of not judging others, but then in my head, I would hear myself like judging myself and just saying all of these negative things about myself of like that I don't fit in or whatever it is, and
But I think this is a great point. Thank you so much, Carly. I think you bring a really good point when you are and only know despair and darkness for so long in a certain period, and primarily in childhood years. It's hard to see hope
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, full transparency, I want to say, like, there were times in my 20s where, like, I couldn't see myself even making it to my 30s, and just, I mean, not only just from the death that I was experiencing, right? But just because I was like, how could life possibly continue on in this way, And so, yeah, of being of so I think the shift really started to happen for me. There's this one beautiful book called Untethered Soul. That one helped me so much of just becoming aware of the voice in your head. And there was like one phrase that they said of how it's like, imagine that voice in your head is like your roommate or you're sitting next to them like on the couch all day. And I was like, I don't want to hear them. I would want to turn them off, like mute them, like almost immediately. So that book really helped to like bring some awareness to that mindset. And then there was also another book, Ask Your Guides, Ask Your Spirit Guides, Ask Your Guides. I can't remember which one it is, but and that one helped me be so much more aware of that it isn't just this physical realm for us, and that I can connect, and to your point of like being able to like manifest, of being able to like talk to spirit and being able to just, even just like talking to myself almost in a way of just being able to ground myself and be like my feet are on this ground. I'm connected to this earth like for a reason, and that that there's a few books, I would say, that's what really helped kind of open my eyes to like shift myself out of that negative perception. Because like you're saying, like, yeah, after going through so much grief and loss, and like I'm saying, where it comes up in waves like months later, and you're like, and you want to get to a point where you're like, I don't want to think about this anymore, like, why am I still thinking about this? And then then I would be like shaming myself for having more emotions come up.
Oh, totally. Yeah. If you're not sure where to start, right? If you're just listening and you're just like,
Mm.
man, I'm in the dumps, Ivana and Carly,
Mm.
I think the number one thing, if I could give someone advice and me looking back at myself in the dumps, I would say do what feels good to your heart.
Mhm.
Is that situation aligning with you? Does it make you feel better? Does it give you energy or does it take energy from you?
Mm.
And there are seasons where it takes your energy, like work, sometimes work, certain situation, what all that. But I will say generally in life, your heart is your biggest guidance.
Mm.
And if you can even just look there a little bit and see, sometimes it might mean cutting out certain connections or changing a job, and that's a hard reality to face, but sometimes when you get out of it, you really see that was the answer. And I just want to add one more thing while I'm on this topic is that you as a listener and anyone is special. You are amazing. And I think sometimes society puts in our minds or our family or friends, I'm not good enough. I'm not capable enough. That is not true.
Mhm.
You are so capable, and it's all a mindset, and you are never alone. You just touched on that book about your spirit guides. I know this is a sensitive, not everyone, it's either woo woo or,
Mhm.
you believe what you want. But at the end of the day, I believe that we're not alone. And you always have people that are looking out for you, like your grandfather, that was really an beautiful example in your own life. And I just feel like I had to get that off my
Yeah.
chest.
No, I appreciate you sharing that too. What's coming up for me, the first point of just like needing to like slow down too. It's like if you are going through it, try your best to slow down, because that's where I sped up. I just was like more and more and more like push things down, where it's like if you're able to slow down and able to sit with it, it's like it's tough, but that's where the work begins. So yeah, like again, like if you're going through one of those tough times, it's like in yeah, I guess of just like trying to yeah, sit with it and slowing down and loving yourself through it, and just really listening to your body. And also like what's coming up for me too is like there's people who go through grief, and or like loss, and like by no means do you have to get yourself in the gym 3 times a week or 4 times a week, like in order to be healthy, right? Or like whatever, like in our society is just so sped up that you see things where it's like, oh no, I should be, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be going and doing X, Y, and Z or whatever it is. Where also a point that I want to make too is, our bodies, we can't decipher between stress, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental stress, right? And if you're going through a loss of any kind, a breakup or anything, like, and how heavy that feels, like the last thing you should be doing is going in and crushing a workout of getting your heart rate so like elevated, it's because then what your body does is we're in that stressed out state, and then your body is just releasing cortisol, right? And also another thing too is like our bodies are like a machine too. So again, if you're going through all of that stress and like most likely or like that really hard time, and you're most likely not eating maybe all that you should be. I mean, it's like when you're going through a heartbreak or a loss of relationship, like that first week eating is hard, and then if you're going into the gym and you're going to take like a HIIT class, for instance, right? And your heart rate is elevated, your body is burning carbs for energy, right? So, and if you're not going and eating carbs for breakfast before that workout, you're putting your body in a more stressed out state. And so then what your body wants to do is hold on to your fat. So then it's like, then what is your why for going to the gym in during that time, right? And if it's just that you want to like clear your mind and get the endorphins going, then like crushing a hard workout is not, that's not the time for that. It more so if you were to go, on a long walk, like you said, or walk if you wanted to go to the gym, like go to walk on an incline and keep your heart rate like at a lower range. And then like I said, your body is like a machine, then that's where you're burning fat for energy, that you're not burning carbs, right? And then usually after movement like that, then you're hungry, and then you're actually providing value to your physical health versus just trying to crush your body, like from my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of almost you're adding stress onto stress in
Hmm.
that scenario.
Exactly.
Can we talk a little bit about how anyone connecting with you and your story could potentially work with you? And what are some services that you're offering?
From my experience of being a personal trainer and a group fitness instructor for almost 14 years now, and putting my experience and more certifications and everything that I've done too, the clientele who I love to work with are people who have similar stories to me or who are going through, something hard or something like that. And I can do one-on-one sessions that are, like an hour or so long, and meeting your body exactly where you're at, because that's like that is so key of looking at your body holistically and getting the whole body approach, and meeting you exactly where you're at, right? Because I'm like, yes, you can go online or I can write you a program to add muscle or to lose fat, right? But if I'm not meeting you exactly where you're at, that program doesn't have much value, right? And so that's where I've been able to really like hone in my profession, right? Of just being able to meet your body exactly where you're at, and so yeah, the I love being able to work, yeah, one-on-one with clients, doing remote sessions. I love in person, so if you're here in Austin, but yeah. Mhm.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you have
Oh,
so much life experience also to pull from that
yeah.
anyone dealing with any kind of hard situation like trauma or grief, maybe a session with Carly could really shed some light on that just because she's seen so much grief in her own lifetime that I think that's the best teacher.
Thank you. Yeah, and kind of like I'm saying of being able to meet your body where you're at, and also being able to look at like the behavior, like looking at behaviors more so, right? So it's like, okay, also I love mobility, with my dance background, and I love being able to like work on people getting them out of pain too. And mobility is such a huge component of that too. And just, I am also so experienced, and with my dance background too, and from doing certifications on mobility and just like moving your body, right? Of not trying to put on like extra stress, of like thinking that you have to lift weights every time, in order to have some sort of like progress or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that 80-20 rule too. I do find in my own life, it's 80% diet, 20% fitness and lifestyle. And I think, yeah, for me, honestly, just that has helped me so much with stress, the movement side. But I think my general well-being, I notice the biggest difference when my nutrition is dialed in.
Another point too is like, if you do want to start working with me or something, don't expect me to just like write you a meal plan, right? Or to like write even necessarily like a workout plan, because that's going to progress, different, depending on like what your life experience is too, right? And also the chances of you being handed this program and you sticking to it is like literally 0%, right? Or maybe like 5% for, so that's why, like I was saying, of working with like health behaviors, where we're going to like look at what you're doing, and we're going to try and add in like one or two things that we can start to shift, right? So for instance, like of prioritizing protein, almost everybody watching or listening, like everybody should prioritize protein, right? And it's like just looking at what that is like in your life, right? It's like maybe we can add a protein snack in the morning or at lunch or something, of trying to like work in certain behaviors versus being like, this is what you have to, this is what is going to be the gold standard and what you have to follow.
Yeah.
And so that's truly where I love working with people, of just, because everything that you're going through, it does matter. It does play a role, right? Like how stressed you are, whether you're working at home, whether you're going to work, whether you have kids, like everything plays a role, and I think the social media and everything has had such an impact on what it should look like, right? Where everybody, no two stories are the same, no two bodies are the same.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Well, if I guess if we close it out for the audience, is there any takeaway that you want to leave the audience with today, Carly? And we will also share, by the way, all her info, contact info in the description of this episode.
Yeah, like as a kid and going through all that grief, it's like I felt so misunderstood in ways. I just felt like a sad kid, then like going into my teenage adult years too. So yeah, that
Did
was
that
one of.
sadness carry into your out of your child? Did you find looking back you were sad for a longer period than that?
Um, I I think so. Like even, like into college, like I was saying too, and also because like I just kept on burying it. And then going into grad school, like I did start leaning into some other vices of just kind of like trying of like numbing, like kind of what I was going through. And almost like disassociating versus like experiencing it for what it was. Another takeaway too for me was, of becoming or feeling, I'm an empath, and I'm such a sensitive human, right? And like that at times it's like that also too is looked at as like negative almost, where it's like,
Like your feelings are too much.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, like kind of tying it back into, it's like that's also one of my like superpowers, and especially like working one-on-one with people, of being able to feel where they're at based on like what they're going through, and like I'm saying, of being able to then like meet them where they're exactly where they are.
Yeah. That's so great. You're such a light in this world, and I'm so happy to know you and be in your presence. And so, thank you again, Carly. And hopefully, we will have Carly on at some future point as well
I would
after
love
she
that.
trains and helps a million people. And we can, okay, well, Thank you
Thank
again.
you so much. Yeah, this has been amazing, and I'm so grateful to have met and connected.